Welcome to the Win, Make, Give podcast, season 2. Today, I'm joined here, as always, with Chad Hyams. And ladies and gentlemen, Bob Stewart is on vacation in Cabo. So we're actually going to just pretend like Bob's here today and ask him questions and get the same non-response that he gives Chad and I.
You said it before I did, Ben. So we'll just say 7 and just leave it at that for poor Bob.
That's right. So season 2, Chad, is all about what?
Winning.
I love it. And today we are super lucky because I get to have a friend and a mentor, just somebody that's contributed a lot to the world and to our community already, Mr. Clint Swindall, who's the founder of Verbalocity, which is a leadership and engagement consulting company. He's produced and published a variety of books, most of which you've probably heard of, things like Engaged Leadership, Living for the Weekday, and one of my favorite sayings, Clint, tell me something good. So, ladies and gentlemen, we are going to talk about winning the Clint Swindall way today. So, Clint, thanks for joining us.
Oh, thank you so much, Ben, for having me. I appreciate it more than you can imagine. Life is good down here in the great state of Texas. We're into the spring. It's about 75 degrees today. It'll probably be 95 degrees by tomorrow. That's how it works in Texas, but it's all good. It's just part of what we do down here in the great state of Texas. But thanks for having me on the show, man. I'm excited about it. And thank you, Chad, for being here. And Bob, all the way down to Cabo. Thanks for your involvement as well.
Yeah, we appreciate Bob being in Cabo. So good for you to thank him there.
Hey, Bob, what would you like to say today? Chad, we're gonna be after this the entire
that's
time.
That's about right.
Yeah, we're not going to tell him we did this either. So we're just going to keep rolling. So I asked Clint. I said, you've taught a lot. You've written a lot of books. You've coached and mentored. You've consulted. I've seen him in front of audiences of 10,000 plus people. So many things. I said, if we could talk about one subject today around winning, Clint referred back to an earlier book that he wrote, I think nearly 10 years ago, Clint, called Living for the Weekday. Tell me the kind of the one or two sentence premise of what this book was about.
Sure. So the focus of what I've done my entire career has been on employee engagement. And I wrote my first book about how leaders go about building a culture to overcome employee disengagement. And I was speaking down in Bermuda one time to a company. And at the end of this 2-day retreat that I had done, there was a CFO who was standing in the back of the room with his arms crossed, looking all grumpy. And he looked at me and he said, you've been down here for 2 days now. You've been telling us all of our responsibility to go out and to build this culture of engagement. But I'm just curious, what's the employee's role? Don't they have a role? They don't get to show up every day with their arms crossed saying, engage me. They need to be doing something as well. What's their role? And I said, that's a fair observation. They do have a role. And I'll be happy to share that with you. He said, good, go write that book and come back and see me. And he turned around and walked out the door. And I went, wow, that's a challenge. So I jumped on the airplane coming back from Bermuda and I started sketching that out. And I called my publisher when I got back and I said, I believe that employees do have a role. And I said, I think I see way too many people who are living for the weekend. They're counting down the days from Monday to Friday, trying to get to this 2-day respite that somehow will make life good for them. And I was never really good at math, but the reality is if there are 7 days in the week and I'm giving 5 of them away and only keeping 2 of them for myself, at the end of my career, I lose. So the only way I win is I have to find a way to look forward to Monday as much as I look forward to Friday. So it's not always about living for the weekend. To me, it's about living for the weekday.
I love that concept, Clint. And I know that we have a lot of entrepreneurs who listen to the Win, Make, Give podcast, and they don't get Saturday and Sunday. Right? An entrepreneur doesn't have this weekend concept, and they have to be the leader of themselves because they're also their employee. Right. I also know in conversations with you over the years that if you could do one thing different, it would be retitle that book.
Yes.
Right? Because people saw it and they were like, well, why do I want to read a book that's going to make me want to go back to work and all of that? But the concepts in the book are incredibly powerful, and we have to remember. And Ben, I know we've worked together for years. It doesn't matter whether it's a Monday, a Thursday, a Sunday. You wake up with the same energy and the same passion to go to work and get done whatever needs to get done that day. And that's what we talk about.
We tend to equate in our minds hours with being more exhausting or not exhausting. But I've come home from work at the end of 14, 16, or 18 hours, and I've been jacked up, and I've been excited. I had energy, and I couldn't even sleep. And I've come home from work after 6 hours and crawled up under a blankie and turned on the Netflix and ate ice cream, been exhausted. And, I think about this all the time, that if you don't enjoy what you do, if you don't find wins every single day, you're going to be exhausted regardless of how many hours or time you put in, right, Clint?
You bet. In fact, it's actually kind of ironic that right now with us starting to emerge from the coronavirus and the global pandemic, and businesses having to determine whether or not employees are going to go back into their offices for those who were working in offices before, and now they're having to determine what their plan is. I keep seeing more and more stories of business leaders who are saying, I just think that we're going to let them stay home because they're happy now and none of them want to come back. And it baffles my mind because, in fact, I saw a CEO of a big company just the other day on the news say, we just looked at it and realized, we're producing well today. So why in the world would we want to come back? And I'm screaming at the TV, one word, culture. That's why you want people to come back, because you lose that culture when I can't go down the hallway and say, hey, Chad, I've got an idea for the next podcast. Let's go grab some lunch and talk about it. Chances of me calling Chad going, hey, you want to get on a Zoom? Because I have some ideas about the next podcast. No, I don't want to get on another Zoom. So you lose that culture piece. And so there's just a part of me that when I look at that, I realize if you don't enjoy that part of your job as much as you enjoy the actual operational part of your job, I wonder how much then you really do love your job. Because I just had breakfast with a bunch of guys this morning, and I said, the reality is we could do this over Zoom. We don't have to get up at 5:30 in the morning and drive over here to this little Mexican food restaurant and meet and have coffee and eat breakfast and have good fellowship together. We just do this on Zoom. No, I want to do it face to face because I enjoy your company. I enjoy that fellowship. And so I find it ironic that we're at a place now where people are okay with saying, I think I'd just rather just stay home than to go and be with others, because to me, that's got to be as much a part of loving your job and loving what you do, because you do that so much during the week as the actual function of your job title.
Yeah, I think we have to avoid being clock punchers. And when you're a clock puncher and you're just checking in and checking out, the job is easily replaceable from the employee's point of view, and the employee's easily replaceable from the employer's point of view, because we don't have a relationship. And I'm a collaborator. I want to work with people. I want to come up with ideas, and I want them to come up with ideas, and I want to talk through it and be a part of it. I want to draw stuff on boards and have pictures and throw things around, like Bob is flinging his hands up in the air. He's probably doing it virtually in Cabo right now. His hands are flying everywhere. We don't even know. But that's what we want, because that gives us energy, right?
Exactly.
Although sometimes it's not bad that people like Bob are working virtually, so we don't have to see.
But we want to see Bob one day a week. Every Wednesday, we need to see it.
Yeah. All right, fine.
So walk us through a little bit of the format or a philosophy or a plan on getting this attitude or this mindset or the ability to actually live for that weekday.
You bet. It's a great question, Ben. I'm just a firm believer that life is about so much more than work and home. And I think that's kind of the crossroads that people are experiencing right now, that work used to be this place I would travel to, and then home is where I would be at the end of the day. And I spent more waking hours at work than I did at home, but I could draw a line between the two. And I knew that those two things were different, and it was very significant. I could go home, I could turn my phone off, I could be with my wife, I could be with my husband, I could be with my significant other, and that was a different place. Well, now, because of COVID, that line is kind of being erased to the point where it's not just work and home, it's just life. And I believe, and as I talk about in Living for the Weekday, that there are 5 different aspects of our lives that ultimately we have to find a way to be happy in each of these 5 in order to truly get to a place where we can consider ourselves to be winning at this game of life. And the first is our career. It's what we choose to do for a living. It used to be this separate thing. Again, it was the place that I got into my car and I went to, and I collaborated with other people, but then I came home and I was able to separate the two. But it's whatever it is we've chosen to do in life, whether it's a job, whether it's a career, whether it's a passion, it's ultimately how we choose to earn a living. The second aspect are our relationships. And again, that's that piece that we're going to miss so much of if we stay separate from the teams that we normally would collaborate with. You know, I'm a firm believer you can't show up and be fully engaged at what you do for a living if you can't get along with your spouse, if you can't get along with your significant other, if you can't get along with your coworkers, if you can't get along with the people that you're around, that you're doing life with. But even more than not being able to be engaged if you're not around them and get along with them, it's difficult to be fully engaged if you're not just completely in with them. As you were talking about the collaboration part, I mean, you want to be able to say, quick, everybody get in here. I've got an idea. You want to grab a marker and start scratching something out on a whiteboard. I mean, that's that relationship part, because those are the people you've chosen to do life with, that you've chosen to build your businesses with. If we don't have those relationships, and it's hard to ever get to the point where we say we really feel like we're winning. The third aspect is our health. I don't think we can ever show up and be fully engaged if we feel lousy every day. We can't show up and be fully engaged if we don't have full physical and mental health. And when I say mental health, I'm talking about the ability to let go of the anchors from our past, that person that angered us, that we just can't get past that person who offended us, that we cross our arms every time we think of them and see them, that we smile at them or grin at them, but we don't ultimately want to sit down and get past. That's a mental health thing, that we can't drag those things behind us and be fully engaged and ever get to a point where we feel like we're winning. We can have a great career, but if we're dragging those grudges around behind us and we have horrible mental health, it just doesn't matter. And obviously the physical health part, we all know that part. I mean, if you don't feel good every day because you eat what you want and you drink what you want and you don't focus at all on health. I mean, I've been there. I've done that. I was telling Chad earlier, I've been 175 most of my life, and I went for a physical about 2 months ago. I stood on a scale. I was 187 pounds. 187 pounds is not a lot of weight for a 6 foot tall guy, but they were 12 of the wrong pounds on my body. And I knew that, and my body knew that, and I felt that. And so I knew why I would wake up in the morning and be tired after 8 hours of sleep. Well, it was because I wasn't doing the things that would make my body feel good. And so it's hard to be engaged when you don't have that. And then the finance piece. Holy cow, it is not possible to show up and be fully engaged at what you've chosen to do for a living if you're not certain whether or not you can make your mortgage payment because you've done such a poor job of managing your finance. I don't care how happy you are in your relationships and how good your health is. If you're not certain whether or not you can send your kids to college that are graduating in 2 years because you just haven't planned yet. I mean, I'm talking to the guru of finance right here that has helped more people, including myself, understand the whole dynamics of wealth building. You know, for a lot of people, and I think you probably saw some of this in your wealth series, for a lot of people, it's not even about managing their wealth. It's about making sure that they can pay all their bills. And when we can't do that, man, it is impossible to show up and be fully engaged at what we do for a living. And then that last piece, the spirituality piece. And first time I introduced this model to a speaker friend of mine, I sent him a text of this model, and I said, "Let me know what you think." And within 30 seconds, he called me. I answered the phone, and he said, "You can't use that word." I said, "What word? Finance?" He said, "No, you know what word I'm talking about. You can't be talking about religion." I said, "I'm not talking about religion. I'm talking about spirituality. Talking about the bigger reason for your existence. If you have religion, I think that's beautiful. I have religion in my life. I think that's fine. I don't think there's a thing in the world wrong with that. But you don't have to be a religious person to believe that you have a bigger purpose for your existence. And when you don't know what that bigger purpose is, when you don't know that you're down here to solve some greater thing or to contribute to the world in a bigger way, If you don't believe that and you don't know what that is, it's almost impossible to show up and be fully engaged and feel like you're winning at life if you have that hole that isn't being filled. And so, and again, I don't think it's a 20%, 20%, 20% all the way down. I don't think it's equal distribution. I think we're at different places in our lives at different times. I think for some people, maybe they just got married and their relationship is at the top of their list, and they're spending all their time, or maybe they're going through a challenge in their relationship and they're committed to working through that, and they're spending all their time with that and less time with their career. Maybe some others just got a business started and they're putting in 14 hours a day in their career, but they're not spending as much time working on their health or whatever. I think sometimes we can get obsessed with some of these aspects of our lives, and it causes others to just kind of fall apart. And the model that I use in Living for the Weekday is actually a weave of all 5 of these things together. Because what I have noticed is it's kind of like your pants. If you were to pull one string or one thread, everything around it gets all jacked up. Well, I believe these 5 kind of weave together that way. If you spend too much time focused on relationships, it could be that your finance falls off, and that's the thing that's out of whack. If you spend so much time saving every penny you make, that could impact the relationships in your life. Or if you spend so much time worried about your career that you don't focus on your health, something is going to be out of whack at some point. I just believe that all 5 of these have to all be working in concert to a level that you're happy with. And when you're happy with where you are in those 5 areas, to me, you're winning, baby.
So Chad, recap those for us.
You got it. 1 was career. 2, relationship. 3, health. 4, finances. And 5, your spirituality.
I assume, Clint, that these come together as a model so that we can come up with something duplicatable for us to feel better and enjoy Mondays of all days.
Correct. There's just a part of me that in that model, when you look at that model and you realize these 5 things are required, and it serves as a reminder that there are those 5. I think sometimes, we get so wrapped up in 2 or 3 of them that we just completely forget about some of the others. But this model is a replicatable model that says here are the 5 areas we need to focus on. And if at any point we ever say, you know what, I don't know why, but I'm just not happy. I had a very good friend of mine call me one day and say, I don't get it, Clint. I have so many things working well in my life right now. And he said, and I've never been more unhappy in my life. And I said, well, let's talk through these 5 areas. And we got down to the last one, to spirituality. And he said, I'm not a big, religious person. And I said, again, that's not what I'm talking about. He said, but I don't know what my purpose is. I don't know why I'm down here. I don't know what my bigger vision is supposed to be. I don't know what I'm supposed to do every day when I bounce out of bed. And he said, I don't know what that is. And he said, that I do believe that's what's causing me to feel that lack of bigger vision of what I need to be doing in my life.
There's an expression, and mainly it started as a health one, right? You can either take care of your health now, or you're going to take care of your health later, right? It's not an option. So you take care of it now, it's going to be a lot easier to do later, but sooner or later it's going to catch up to you. Clint, I think all 5 of these things, I could just fill in the blank, right? Take care of your finances now, or you're going to be taking care of your finances later, whatever that situation is. Take care of the relationships now, or you're going to be taking care of, because you're not going to have them and you're going to need them, whatever it is. And I think it's a great 5 things for everybody out there listening to focus on and sit there and say, look, I might be working on this one more than the others right now. And that's okay for a limited time. Yet you can't let the others vanish, because if you don't, you're going to pay for it by taking care of it later when you don't want to.
100% correct. 100%.
I think this last point you brought up, Clint, of we're feeling discouraged because we're not tying what we're doing every single day to some end outcome or some person that it affects or something that we're moving for. This lack of purpose could be a cloud that follows us around our entire career. And maybe it's because we're thinking that there should be some grandiose purpose in everything that we do. And it doesn't necessarily have to be that way. So how do you help somebody find some purpose so that they get their energy, joy, and happiness back?
That's a great question. In fact, my friend, who was struggling with his spirituality, and again, depending on what word you like, just his bigger purpose. He said, I don't know what my bigger purpose is. Can you tell me what my bigger purpose is? And I said, well, I can't tell you. And he said, that's your answer? And I said, yeah, that's my answer. He said, and people pay you for this, did they pay you for this advice you give, and that's your advice? I said, no. I said, I can't tell you what your purpose is, but I can tell you how I think you can go about finding your purpose. And I said, and it's, you need to find an answer to this one simple question. And that is, what makes you angry? If you can figure out what makes you angry, what social injustice makes you angry, if you can figure out what that is and begin to contribute your time, your talent, and your treasure towards solving that issue, you then very well may have found your purpose. I said, is it child abuse? Is it spousal abuse? Is it homelessness? Is it, go down the list. I mean, what is it that when you hear about that, it literally makes the hair on the back of your neck stand up, and it pisses you off to the point where you say, this has got to stop. I said, once you figured that out, you have found your purpose, my friend. And now you need to wake up every day saying, regardless of what I get done at work, regardless of what I get done in the relationships in my life, regardless of the health decisions that I make, and regardless of what I do with my money today, if by the time I put my head on a pillow tonight, I can say that somehow I gave my time, my talent, or my treasure toward that, you have found your purpose. And that then gives meaning to all the other things that you need to do in that model. I said, there are days when I wake up prior to the pandemic. There was a day that back in the day, they used to have these things called conferences. They were large gatherings of people, and you would travel there and gather with other humans. And at those gatherings, I would speak. And I said, I would get on these planes and I would travel around and I would get in front of these groups, and I love to do it. And it was without question, I believe that's also part of my purpose, that I'm delivering what I deliver in front of large groups. I said, but there were times where I would have to get on an airplane and fly to some state that I really didn't want to fly to, into some small little airport where I really didn't want to go. And I would be sitting there on Sunday afternoon looking at my schedule going, oh, on Tuesday, I've got to go here. I really don't want to go. But you know what? I'm going to get on an airplane and go, because my wife and I are the founders of the First Chance Foundation, taking care of abandoned, abused, and neglected children. And one of the only ways I can do that is by getting on that airplane and going and doing what I do for a living, so that I have the funds, so that we then can cover all the expenses for our foundation, so that the donated dollars that come in can go directly to take care of kids in need. Now, I could choose to not go on Tuesday. Wouldn't be income for my company then, but it also wouldn't be a way for us to take care of our foundation. And so when you get clear on the purpose part, I think all the other stuff kind of just starts to fall into place.
Wow. All right. Hold that for a second, Ben. Hang on. I got to jump in right here. Well, one, nobody's ever asked me what makes me angry. But Clint, you just talked about something, and I just want to bring up that here in season 2 of Win, Make, Give, we are focused on living up to the give portion. And as everybody who's been listening knows, we are choosing a charity to donate to each and every episode in season 2, where we will match the number of listens the episode gets within the first 30 days. And as you, as our guest speaker, we were going to ask you, of course, I think you've just kind of given us the hint, right? We were going to ask you, what charity is it that we can make a donation to based on the number of listens this episode gets within its first 30 days? And I got to imagine it's going to be the one that you guys
just nailed it. The First Chance Foundation. It's our foundation that we formed, I guess, going on now 17 years ago, to take care of abandoned, abused, and neglected children. We have been, for the last 6 years, doing a fundraiser every summer called Ribs and Ritas, where we bring together anywhere between 250 to 300 people, and we typically raise about $200,000 in that one night to help us fund our programs. And we were not able to do one last year because of COVID-19, just like a lot of nonprofits. And so that would be very much appreciated for the foundation.
Well, there you go. So everybody listening to this episode, share it with somebody so that they can listen to it, so that we can help cover the income that the foundation lost by not being able to have that event. And if you have a charity that you as a listener want us to be donating to in season 2, you've got to join us in our Facebook group, facebook.com/groups/winmakegives, because once a month we ask you to nominate the charities for the upcoming month. So make sure you're in our group so that you can answer that post when it shows up, so that we can pick one of your charities to donate to this month. All right, Ben, Bob had something he wanted
Bob,
to ask.
What's your takeaway so far? Well,
he's still counting.
Let's move on from that then, I guess, everybody. Some podcasts, Chad, they have sponsorships and advertising. They use it to make money. We have no sponsorship. We have no advertising. We make no money. All we do is give money away. So it's not like we're giving away a percentage of the advertising dollars we take. We're not. We're just writing a check to do good and to continue to get our message and our content out to the world. Have you ever read Man's Search for Meaning?
I have not. Man's Search for Meaning.
Yeah, by Viktor Frankl. One of the more famous books in the world about purpose. And it's super short, which is right up my alley for books. It's also a really tough read because it starts off telling the story of Viktor going through the concentration camps in World War II. He was imprisoned in a variety of camps, but some of the worst. And he saw his friends and his neighbors and his family die in these camps. And one of the comments he made, he said, some people died at the hands of Germany, but a lot of people died because they gave up hope. They had no purpose. And you could see it in them. You could see the change in them when they just gave up. That they didn't go slowly. They went quickly. Well, Viktor emerged successfully from these camps and survived after much abuse and punishment and harm. And it's a truly horrific story. And he resumed back into his role as a psychologist, which is what he did prior to being thrown in these camps. And he became a very famous and very well known for helping people. And one of the people that he worked a lot with were people that were suicidal. And he asked them a really tough question. And there's a point to all this stuff. People would come in and say, I just don't even know if I want to live anymore. I feel suicidal. And Viktor just kind of looked him in the eyes and he said, why don't you just kill yourself? Kind of, here's a gun, so to speak. The people responded back with, well, I can't. And he said, why? And he said, well, I can't do that to my wife, or I can't do that to my husband, or I can't do that to my kids, or there's still things that I want to finish in life. And he said, exactly. So you do have a purpose. You do have a reason to live. And you've been walking around acting like you didn't. But when given the choice to not live, you're not willing to take that option because you really do have a purpose. And I think sometimes you have to ask yourself really tough questions or have somebody just to call you out on your stuff and say, no, there is a reason for you to get up tomorrow. You made a promise. You gave your word. You're going to help people. Somebody's paying you to do it. You're going to do good, or whatever that might be. But it takes somebody asking tough questions. And in your book, one of the things you referred to was asking tough questions of yourself. Anything you would add to that? What we would say to ourselves or ask to ourselves if we wanted to find joy in the workday?
Yeah. I think it's a matter of asking ourselves what winning really means to us. If winning is the theme, what does that really mean? Does that mean that you have to come in first at whatever it is you're doing, or does that mean you simply have to be the best you that you can contribute to whatever it is that you're doing? You see, I'm a firm believer that we can come in first and still lose, and then we can lose and not come in first. I mean, it's just completely possible that we could give up our values, that we could give up what's important to us in order to come in first, so that at the end of the day, our name is at the top of the list, but in reality, we lost. And I do believe that it is completely possible to technically lose, but ultimately win. If the goal was to be better than you were last time, but that wasn't good enough to be at the top of the list, but you were able to achieve that, well, that's winning. And so I think part of what people have to be able to do is to be able to ask themselves that tough question: what is winning for you? Is it coming in first? Because if that indeed is the goal, then would you maybe do some things that would go against what you know is right for you and the people around you? Or do you define it as simply being a better you tomorrow than you were today? And so I think before people can really get comfortable with the idea of whether or not they're winning, they have to define what that means for them.
Yeah.
To me, that's a tough question for somebody to be able to answer for themselves.
That's right up our alley, because one of the things we talk about is asking yourself, what would winning look like tomorrow? And what I heard you kind of say in your own words, so let me kind of put it in my words, is you got to have a finish line. Imagine if you look at life as this big, long race that has no finish line, of course you're exhausted. But if you knew that there was these finish lines that you get to and you get to high five and say, you know what, I did it, I finished it. I don't have to be first in a marathon. I'd just be happy if I crossed the finish line. Chad might have.
That's right.
I'd just be happy if you started one, Ben. I'd just be happy if we can get you on a
Hey,
marathon.
Bob, have you ran a marathon?
That's what I thought. Yeah.
So, all right, great. So the first thing is, what does winning look like? What else would you say?
I would probably say that in many people's eyes, they believe that that some days you win, some days you lose. I think a shift in thinking is that some days you win and some days you learn.
Mm.
And as long as you look at that not winning day as, why did I not win today? As long as you learn something from that, well, while you may not, again, have come out at the top of the list, you've learned something that gives you the opportunity tomorrow, depending on your definition of winning, to give it another shot. But this idea that winning, that the opposite of winning is losing, well, no wonder so many people will knock others over in order to try to win. If they can't win, if they can just look at that. In fact, we put a sign up in our barbecue trailer that says, some days we win, some days we learn. It's just our way of reminding ourselves that even in those days when we don't come out at the top of the list, we ask ourselves, what did we learn today? What did we learn?
Yeah. You know, I'm looking at two of my mentors here on the screen in front of me while we're recording this and getting to see the two of you. And I think another question that neither of you might even think to ask, you just do it so naturally, would be, who am I taking with me today on this journey? Right? Who am I winning with? Because I've never seen either of you win alone. Right? Every time, Clint, you talk about winning, it's you and your competition barbecue team, or it's you and Heather, or it's you and that room of people who are with you. And Ben has never won on his own, because he's always, even people who are like fighting along the way, he's like, no, come on, you're going to win with me. I've been in enough award ceremonies to see Ben run out of the room so his team can go be the ones who win. So I think a third question to ask in there might be, and who am I taking with me today as I go to win?
Or who do we leave behind if we don't? Yeah. These are all solid ones. Bob,
all right. So Clint, you're going to ask Bob for his input again? We know that we know where we're going on that. All right. So Clint, you gave us the areas to focus on, right? We got those 5 areas to focus on: that career, relationship, health, finances, and spirituality. You talked about, you know, if you don't know, where are you spending your time, your talent, your treasure, right? It's finding that purpose, that spirituality, as we said. And if those of you who are listening, who are sitting there go, I don't know what mine is. Clint asked that great question, right? What is it that makes you angry, right? What's that injustice out there that makes you so angry that it motivates you to do something? I've never heard it put that way. I mean, I guess I've just known what my purpose was enough that you've never asked me that question in our conversations. But what a great question, that everyone has an answer to that. There's nobody who's not going to be able to say, here's what makes me angry.
And quite frankly, right? if you don't know, well, then you've got some homework to do before you can ever determine what your purpose is. If you've never really sat down and thought, well, what is it that makes me angry? You know, for my wife and I, it was very clear to us when we sat down and asked ourselves that question. It was the idea that there were children who were abandoned, abused, or neglected. That children, you know, as adults, you know, people make decisions and they get themselves into certain situations that they have to try to get themselves out of. As children don't have an option, and they didn't choose to be here, and they deserve and they need someone to help them, to guide them, to develop them, to be a mentor to them. And anyone who doesn't have the opportunity to grow up in that world, to us, well, that's infuriating. Well, that was a simple one for us. No, that was just simple for us to say, no, we need to create a world in whatever little way we can. And by the way, we also know that no matter how much money we can raise, we're never going to end abandonment or abuse or neglect. You know, we hear people all the time saying, we are going to put an end to spousal abuse. No, you're not. As long as there's evil in the world, there will always be spousal abuse. As long as there's evil in the world, there will always be child abuse. As long as there's evil in the world, there will always be racial inequity. I mean, that's just, it is what it is. We won't ever eliminate those things. But if every day, whatever that thing is that makes you so angry that the hair on the back of your neck stands up, whatever that is, in whatever small way, to maybe you raise $10 a day to help that, then if that's all you can do, that's your step. If you have the reach to go out and raise $1 million, well, then that's your contribution to it. But we all have to understand that whatever that is, it won't ever end any of it. But every day of our life, we have to be able to get to the end and look back and say, I did everything I could every day to solve that issue that made the hair on the back of my neck stand up.
And again, here are two of my mentors, and the way you are passionate about that, Clint, and it's given you purpose. Ben is just as passionate about food for people, right? Whether it was just taking someone to lunch because they needed it, whether it's raising ridiculous amounts of money for food banks, he's got that same passion that you have. It just happens to be a different topic, but there it is. There's that purpose. And now look at two really, really, really successful people. Why? Because they really have something every day to wake up for. And for those of you who can't give a lot of money, go listen to season 2, episode 10, where we talked about winning through giving. And we talk about different ways that you can give that don't have to be dollars out of your pocket if that's not a position you're currently in.
Love it. I love it. And I applaud you, Ben, for your passion for feeding people. I know that without question, I'm of no use to anyone on the face of the globe when I am hungry, and I know the value of good nutrition in order to perform at your best. And the thought that we live in the United States of America and we have a single person who can't find adequate nutrition is just, it's unacceptable. And we are linked to our local food pantry. It's called Provisions. And one of the I used to serve on their board, but then also we give to them pretty regularly because a great number of they call them clients that come through the doors in need of food are usually dragging a child or two behind them. And it's absolutely heartbreaking to look over and realize there's a child that, due to nothing they've done, can't find enough food.
You know, Bob Stewart and I could go to skip a meal or two, but you know, there really shouldn't be a kid out there that is homeless or a kid out there that's hungry. I just think that that's unacceptable in our world. So that's where our passions go. In the very beginning, when we started talking about Living for the Weekday book, you told the story of being on the plane and the guy coming back and saying, well, what's the employee's role? So I would like to end this particular content that we're doing with, how do we have that conversation as a leader with our people to say, you have a role in finding happiness in your day and coming here with energy and leaving here with the same amount. What does that conversation sound like? Or how would you advise a leader to have that convo with their people?
Great question, Ben. Great question. For me, it's about, as it is with most things in life, about awareness. It's about making people aware of two things. One, their contribution to the culture of the organization, that they're either adding to it or taking away from it every single day, without question, whether they are doing that in person or doing that virtually through their involvement in Zoom meetings and never turning their camera on and all the things that make you wonder whether or not they're even, personally engaged. I think it's a matter of making sure that people are aware of their contribution to the culture, and then making them aware that those 5 areas are how they contribute to the culture. Too often we ask people to contribute to a culture, but we don't necessarily tell them how. And so for me, it's a matter of saying, we want you to be a solid contributor to the culture. And the way you can do that is give attention to these 5 areas of your life. I'm not telling you how to do it. I'm not telling you what to do. However, I am telling you these are the 5 areas that I believe will help you to be a better, more well-rounded person who at the end of the day can feel as though they truly are winning. And when you personally feel like you're winning, you're contributing to the culture of the organization. I've always said that organizations are not made up of good employees. Organizations are made up of good people. And if I can make you a good person, then that will translate over into being a strong contributor to the organization, whether you're an employee or an agent or whatever it is you may be. Ultimately, it's up to you to be a good person. And if I can get you, and not only encourage you and make you aware of your need to be a good person by doing these 5 things, but if I can do something to help you in those areas, that's what I loved about your wealth series. Finance is a big part of people's lives. And you aren't just saying, hey, I want you to come be a part of, helping build this organization. You're saying, look, I want you to personally build your own wealth and to take better control of your own finances. And by doing that, that will help you to be a happier person. If you're a happier person, you're a better person. If you're a better person, you're a better contributor to the culture of whatever organization you're a part of. And so that's why I love organizations that say, number one, we're going to focus on health programs. We're going to help you to become healthier. We're going to dedicate funds to make you healthier. We're going to have a finance program for you. We're going to have a relationship program for you. If you're struggling in your relationships, the organization is paying for a relationship program that you can sign up for. Take it online and we'll cover the cost of it. I love when I hear organizations that are willing to help people in those areas. But it all begins with the awareness that if you want to contribute to our culture, here is how you can do that. Not just by showing up on time, not just being here when you need to be here, not doing whatever it is you're asked to do, but becoming a better person so that ultimately you can become a better contributor to our culture.
Well, let's pretend for a second that you're my boss and you just gave me that speech, Clint. And I'm going to come back and say, you know what? My money's fine. Money's good. I know I need to work on my health. I get it. I'll go do something about that. And but to be honest, Clint, I show up here every day. I've been showing up here for 5 years straight. I show up on time. I leave on time. So when you tell me I need to figure out how I can win in my career more, I don't even know what you mean. What would you say to us?
I would say, again, I would circle back to how do you define winning? I might have a definition of what I want you to achieve in order for you to be winning in my eyes. But my response back to an employee like that would be, you've been showing up here for 5 years, you've been doing what you've been asked to do, and you've checked all the boxes. But what does winning mean to you? How do you measure that? And what are you doing every day in order to feel as though you're contributing to this culture in a way that makes you win. Because if you don't feel like you're winning, you're never going to make us feel like you're contributing to the win of the organization. So my response to someone like that would simply be, it all depends on your definition of winning as it relates to your career, not necessarily my career goals for you.
You think you could have people that are showing up at a high level and you feel like they're getting their objectives done and you're perfectly happy, but they don't find any joy in work because
Absolutely.
they don't think they're winning for some reason?
Sure. And again, what's their definition of winning? Because if you're showing up and you're checking the boxes and you're meeting the targets and all of those things, but it's not something that just gets you juiced, if it's not something that just makes you want to bounce out of bed in the morning, you hear people all the time asking that question, well, tell me what keeps you up at night so we can focus on. I don't care what keeps you up at night. I want to know what makes you bounce out of bed in the morning. Because once I know what makes you bounce out of bed in the morning, now I know how you measure success. And now we can work on that. I'm not worried about the issues, the problems. I want to focus on what's working well and what makes you juiced and excited. And just because I can show up, I mean, there's some things that I can do and I can do well. I mean, I could go become a cook at a restaurant. I love to cook. I enjoy cooking and I'm pretty good at it. I could do that. I could show up every day. I could be there on time and I would stay late and I would do the cooking. And I'd get people to say, great job. And I'd go home at the end of the day and go, okay, according to my boss, I'm checking all the boxes, but I really don't want to be doing that for a living. So do I think people can show up and do that? Absolutely. But I think part of our job as a leader is to truly ask those questions. What is it that makes you bounce out of bed in the morning? And are you actually doing that every day to the point where you feel as though you're winning? Not by my standard, but by yours.
Now, Clint, last question, and then Chad will wrap us up. You're a competitive, is that what you say, barbecuer? Is there a way to put that?
Competition barbecue cook.
You're competent. So what's it take to win in barbecue? I win in a lot of areas, but I've never won at a high level in barbecue. So what's the secret to winning at a high level in barbecue?
He has won at eating good level of good barbecue. I've seen Ben put his picture on the wall for eating that 50-ounce, whatever it is. But Clint, what is it that you can share?
Wow, there's just so much to it. It's, a lot of people.
Lots of salt.
Lots of salt. Lots of salt. You ask a very fair question, one of which does not have a very simple or short answer to it. It's a very complicated, as easy as it may sound, it's a very complicated thing in that people like different things and don't like other things. And there's the quality of the meat that you start out with. There's a life lesson right there. I don't care what you sprinkle on or inject into a mediocre piece of meat. If you start with mediocrity, you will end with mediocrity. You have to start in life with the best possible ingredients you can. And once you start with the best possible piece of meat, then you can worry about all the other stuff that you can sprinkle on it or glaze on it or do whatever else it is you want to do to make it look pretty inside of a competition box. But there's a life lesson for you. Start with the best you can possibly start with, or otherwise you're going to end up with a mediocre.
Hey, Clint, you need to call your publisher, and we're gonna have you start your next book. It's what I learned about leadership in barbecuing, and your first thing is you can't start with a bad piece of meat.
I love it. Yeah. Chapter 1.
Oh, not a salt that's going to fix a bad piece of meat.
It's an excellent point. And I got to say, I've had the pleasure of being at Clint's house when one of his teammates actually did barbecue for us as we were doing a mastermind event. And that might still be one of the best meals that I've had, other than Ben grilling some oysters, maybe at your house. So it's always something with a grill and a mentor that seems to provide some of the best meals and opportunities. And folks, I've already mentioned to you to join us in our Facebook group, facebook.com/groups/win-make-give, because we ask there questions about the episodes. We'll have a link to Clint's book right there when we post it. We'll be talking about where you can nominate companies and organizations to be the recipient of the donations that we're making. We want you to come join. We want you to share this episode so more money can go to the First Chance Foundation, and more people can get to hear the message Clint shared. And we hope you're doing that with all of the episodes from Win, Make, Give Season 1 and Season 2. And folks, until our next episode, as always, do good.